Now turn to Part 1. Part 1. You will hear a woman called Jan phoning a man about their local conservation group. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Hello?
Oh, hello. My name's Jan. Are you the right person to talk to about the Buckworth Conservation Group?
Yes, I'm Peter. I'm the secretary.
Good. I've just moved to this area and I'm interested in getting involved. I was in a similar group where I used to live. Could you tell me something about your activities, please?
Of course. Well, we have a mixture of regular activities and special events. One of the regular ones is trying to keep the beach free of litter. A few of us spend a couple of hours a month on it, and it's awful how much there is to clear. I wish people would be more responsible and take it home with them.
I totally agree. I'd be happy to help with that. Is it okay to take dogs?
I'm afraid not, as they're banned from the beach itself. You can take them along the cliffs, though, and children are welcome.
Right.
We also manage a nature reserve, and there's a lot to do there all year round. For example, because it's a popular place to visit, we spend a lot of time looking after the paths and making sure they're in good condition for walking.
I could certainly help with that.
Good. And we have a program of creating new habitats there. We've just finished making and installing nesting boxes for birds to use, and next we're going to work on encouraging insects. They're important for the biodiversity of the reserve.
They certainly are.
Oh, and we're also running a project to identify the different species of butterflies that visit the reserve. You might be interested in taking part in that.
Sure. I was involved in something similar where I used to live, counting all the species of moths. I'd enjoy that.
Another job we're doing at the reserve is replacing the wall on the southern side, between the parking area and our woodshed. It was badly damaged in a storm last month.
Okay.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Then, as I said, we have a program of events as well, both at the weekend and during the week.
Right. I presume you have guided walks. I'd like to get to know the local countryside as I'm new to the area.
Yes, we do. The next walk is to Ruston Island a week on Saturday. We'll be meeting in the car park at Dunsmore Beach at low tide. That's when the sands are dry enough for us to walk to the island without getting wet.
Sounds good.
The island's a great place to explore. It's quite small, and it's got a range of habitats. It's also an ideal location for seeing seals just off the coast or even on the beach.
Okay. And is there anything we should bring? Like a picnic, for instance?
Yes, do bring one, as it's a full-day walk. And of course, it'll be wet walking across and back, so make sure your boots are waterproof.
I must buy a new pair. There's a hole in one of my current ones. Well, I'd definitely like to come on the walk.
Great. Then later this month, we're having a one-day woodwork session in Hopton Wood.
I've never tried that before. Is it okay for beginners to take part?
Definitely. There'll be a couple of experts leading the session, and we keep the number of participants down, so you'll get as much help as you need.
Excellent. I'd love to be able to make chairs.
That's probably too ambitious for one day. You'll be starting with wooden spoons. And of course, learning how to use the tools. And anything you make is yours to take home with you.
That sounds like fun. When is it?
It's on the 17th from 10 a.m. until 3. There's a charge of £35, including lunch, or £40 if you want to camp in the wood.
I should think I'll come home the same day. Well, I'd certainly like to join the group. It sounds like you've got...
That is the end of part 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers to part 1.
Section 2. You will hear a tour leader giving information about a bus tour. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. As you listen to the first part of the talk, answer questions 11 to 15.
Thank you for choosing City Tours. The reason so many people choose our tours when visiting this city is because you can design your tour to suit your own interests. Your all-day pass entitles you to board our bus at any stop and stay as long as you like at each place. The all-day bus pass costs $18 for adults. Children between the ages of 5 and 12 pay half the adult fare, and children under 5 ride for free. Our buses run every hour on the half hour, starting at 8:30 a.m. Our most popular tour is the Centre City Tour, which goes to all the major attractions in the centre of the city. From the starting point here at the tour bus office, the bus goes to the first stop, Hill Park. As you may guess, this park is located at the top of a small hill. The next stop is the fishing docks. Following that, the bus goes on to the third stop, Bay Bridge, located at the foot of the bridge which crosses the bay. The fourth stop is in the shopping district. Then the fifth and last stop is at Green Street.
Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
There are many interesting things to do and see on the Centre City Tour. At the first stop, you can enjoy a spectacular view of the bay, the city, and especially of the fishing docks, which are located at the foot of the hill. At the second stop, you can walk around and look at the boats. Fresh fish from the bay is also for sale here, since this is the place where the fishermen bring in their catch. The next stop is where some of the city's finest seafood restaurants are located, so you might want to plan a lunch stop here. You can eat fresh fish here, prepared in the traditional local way. The fourth stop is, of course, where you can do your shopping. Don't miss the opportunity to purchase some of our city's famous handmade baskets. You'll want to take several home as souvenirs of your visit to our city. Finally, at the last stop on the tour, you can visit one of the oldest buildings in our city, the theatre. This building was built over 400 years ago and is still used today as a place to see plays, musicals and other performances, as well as our annual film festival.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3. You will hear two veterinary science students called Diana and Tim discussing their work placements and their course modules. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
So, Tim, we have to do a short summary of our work experience on a farm.
Right. My farm was great, but arranging the work experience was hard. One problem was it was miles away and I don't drive. And also, I'd really wanted a placement for a month, but I could only get one for 2 weeks.
I was lucky. The farmer let me stay on the farm, so I didn't have to travel. But finding the right sort of farm to apply to wasn't easy.
No, they don't seem to have websites, do they? I found mine through a friend of my mother's, but it wasn't easy.
No.
My farm was mostly livestock, especially sheep. I really enjoyed helping out with them. I was up most of one night helping a sheep deliver a lamb.
On your own?
No, the farmer was there, and he told me what to do. It wasn't a straightforward birth, but I managed. It was a great feeling to see the lamb stagger to its feet and start feeding almost straight away, and to know that it was okay. Then another time, a lamb had broken its leg, and they got the vet in to set it, and he talked me through what he was doing. That was really useful.
Yes, my farm had sheep too. The farm was in a valley and they had a lowland breed called Suffolks, although the farmer said they'd had other breeds in the past.
So were they bred for their meat?
Mostly, yes. They're quite big and solid.
My farm was up in the hills, and they had a different breed of sheep. They were Cheviots.
Oh, I heard their wool's really sought after.
Yes, it's very hard wearing, and they use it for carpets.
Right.
I was interested in the amount of supplements they add to animals' feed nowadays. Like, even the chickens got extra vitamins and electrolytes in their feed.
Yes, I found that too. And they're not cheap. But my farmer said some are overpriced for what they are, and he didn't give them as a matter of routine, just at times when the chickens seemed to particularly require them.
Yes, mine said the same. He said certain breeds of chickens might need more supplements than the others, but the cheap and expensive ones are all basically the same. So, did your farm have any other livestock, Diana?
Yes, dairy cows. I made a really embarrassing mistake when I was working in the milk shed. Some cows had been treated with antibiotics, so their milk wasn't suitable for human consumption, and it had to be put in a separate container. But I got mixed up, and I poured some milk from the wrong cow in with the milk for humans, so the whole lot had to be thrown away. The farmer wasn't too happy with me.
I asked my farmer how much he depended on the vet to deal with health problems. I'd read reports that the livestock's health is being affected as farmers are under pressure to increase production. Well, he didn't agree with that, but he said that actually some of the stuff the vets do, like minor operations, he'd be quite capable of doing himself.
Yeah, my farmer said the same, but he reckons vet skills are still needed.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Now we've got to give a bit of feedback about last term's modules. Just short comments, apparently. Shall we do that now?
OK, so medical terminology.
Well, my heart sank when I saw that, especially right at the beginning of the course, and I did struggle with it.
I thought it'd be hard, but actually I found it all quite straightforward. What did you think about diet and nutrition?
OK, I suppose.
Do you remember what they told us about pet food and the fact that there's such limited checking into whether or not it's contaminated? I mean, in comparison with the checks on food for humans, I thought that was terrible.
I think the module that really impressed me was the animal disease one, when we looked at domesticated animals in different parts of the world, like camels and water buffalo and alpaca. The economies of so many countries depend on these, but scientists don't know much about the diseases that affect them.
Yes. I thought they'd know a lot about ways of controlling and eradicating those diseases, but that's not the case at all. I loved the wildlife medication unit. Things like helping birds that have been caught in oil spills. That's something I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah. I thought I might write my dissertation on something connected with that.
Right. So, actually, I was thinking something along the same lines.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers to Part 3.
Section 4. You will hear a professor give a lecture on Louisa May Alcott. First, you have some time to look at the questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and complete the timeline in questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon. Today I'd like to continue our discussion of the lives of prominent American writers by talking about Louisa May Alcott, one of the best-known 19th century writers. Alcott is known for her moralistic girls' novels, but she was a much more serious individual than those novels might lead one to believe. She was born in 1832, the daughter of Bronson Alcott, who was one of the founders of the Transcendentalist movement. Bronson Alcott was a philosopher, but not a provider, and the family lived close to poverty. From an early age, Louisa was determined to find a way to improve her family's economic situation. As a teenager, she worked to support her family by taking on a variety of low-paying jobs, including teacher, seamstress, and household servant. Alcott also started writing when she was young. She wrote her first novel when she was just 17 years old, although it wasn't published until many years after her death. It was called The Inheritance. In 1861, the Civil War broke out. Alcott worked as a volunteer, sewing uniforms and bandages for soldiers. The following year, she enlisted as an Army nurse. She spent the war years in Washington, nursing wounded soldiers at a military hospital. While working at the hospital, she wrote many letters to her family at home in Massachusetts. After the war, she turned the letters into a book, which was published under the title Hospital Sketches. She also wrote numerous romantic stories, which she sold to magazines. Around this same time, she was offered the opportunity to travel to Europe as the companion to an invalid. When she returned home from Europe in 1866, she found her family still in financial difficulty and in need of money, so she went back to writing. Her big break came in 1868, with the publication of her first novel for girls, Little Women. The novel achieved instant success, and the public wanted more. From then on, Alcott supported herself and her family by writing novels for girls. It wasn't the writing she had dreamed of doing, but it earned her a good income. Alcott took care of her family for the rest of her life. In 1878, her youngest sister May got married. A year later, May died after giving birth to a daughter. Louisa Alcott raised her sister's orphaned child. In 1882, Bronson Alcott suffered a stroke. Soon after that, Louisa Alcott set up a house for him, her niece, her sister Anna, and Anna's 2 sons in Boston. Her mother was no longer living by this time. Alcott was still writing novels for girls, including 2 sequels to Little Women, Little Men and Joe's Boys. The latter was published in 1886. Louisa Alcott had suffered poor health ever since she contracted typhoid fever while working as a war nurse. She died in March of 1888, at the age of 55. She was buried in Concord, Massachusetts.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers. You will now have 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the listening answer sheet.